the Roots Partnership and how we've used the conservation standards approach to it. Well, so to give you a bit of background about wildlife trafficking and air transport, this is a map which our Roots partner C4ADS developed using data of wildlife seizures and air transport. And the different colours represent different kind of wildlife categories, including ivory, rhino, horn, birds, reptiles, pangolins, other mammals, and marine products. And so you can see, I won't go into too much detail, but you can see that although there's a lot of concentration between Africa and Asia in the routes that wildlife is being trafficked, it is clearly a global issue, and it's actually the fourth largest illegal trade following drugs, counterfeit goods, and human trafficking. And wildlife traffickers will use any method that they can to smuggle wildlife, whether it's in their luggage that goes into the hold, or under their clothing in specially made pockets, or tied around their waist or their legs, or in their carry-on luggage, in whatever items they're able to conceal something in, they'll conceal it there. Or they'll traffic live wild animals in live animals cargo and just falsely declare them as a different non-protected species. And obviously it's a threat to biodiversity, which is why we're concerned about it. But it's also a significant threat to aviation, since trafficking involves bribery, corruption, fraud, money laundering, and even in some cases violence. So it poses a threat to whoever's working along that supply chain. And it poses risks to aviation business, obviously, reputational risks if an airline or airport has been found to be carrying illegal wildlife, operational risks due to the corruption involved and vulnerability of transport staff to corruption, legal risks, and also health and safety risks, including injury and also, of course, the spread of zoonotic diseases. So in line with the conservation standards cycle, in January 2015, a collaborative action planning workshop was held as part of the USAID Wildlife Traps project to assess the issue of wildlife trafficking in transport supply chains, to identify the challenges and vulnerabilities and possible solutions, and the needs for implementing those solutions. And so one of the needs that was identified was for a cross-sectoral partnership, which led to the establishment of Roots in October 2015. So Roots stands for Reducing Opportunities for Unlawful Transport of Endangered Species. It's supported by USAID and includes partners from the transport sector, US government, academics, and conservation NGOs. And we're focusing on air transport globally. And our main transport partners are Airports Council International and the International Air Transport Association, which represents airlines. And we're running until just December at the end of this year. So step 2 of conservation standards planning, we developed a theory of change for routes with the support of USAID's Measuring Impact team, coming up with this. And so our theory of change was that if we engage the corporate sector with information on wildlife trafficking and how it affects aviation, and we presented solutions and had the resources and guidance to help them take action, then they would commit to taking action, including conducting training and integrating training into company programs, strengthening policies and protocols, and raising awareness among their staff and among their clients and their peers. And then with these engaged companies taking action, this would eventually lead to building awareness across the wider transport sector and taking action, and then eventually leading behaviour change at ground level among transport staff in terms of increasing detection and reporting of wildlife trafficking to law enforcement.
Hey, Philippa, it's Teresa. Whoops, double that. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Teresa.
Yeah, Philippa, we're not seeing your whole screen for some reason. And one of the, we're not sure if it's because you might not be having a full screen view on your laptop. So you might have to stop and then reshare. So we're part of your screen's being cut out.
Is it which part of the screen? Can you tell?
I think it's all 4 sides almost. It's like we're only getting a subset of it all the way around.
It's like you're zoomed in on the slide and we're missing, like from here, it looks like we're missing the bottom, the left, and down.
The right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even the right.
Yeah, even the right a little bit. Maybe just trying to share it again. Yeah, stopping and trying to share it again. Maybe will help.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah, I can see it on my screen like that.
Or if you want, I can try. You did send me your slides, so I could open them on my slide or on my computer.
Yeah. Is it out? Hang on, if I.
Better now, Philippa. You just have to change from presenter view to full screen.
Okay. Is this better? I think.
Now we've got you back.
Share your screen.
Can you, is it all right?
You're not sharing at the moment, Philippa. You just have to share your screen again.
Oh, sorry.
I think maybe, Philippa, if this doesn't work, I will share from my screen and
Great.
and we'll see if
works.
that. Oh, yay, good.
Better.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I haven't been looking in the chat box if that's where, if people have been mentioning it there. Okay, yeah, so if it happens again, just let me know. So we developed this theory of change with USAID's Measuring Impact team. And I've been through it with you now. So we had 5 objectives, which were to improve the data analytics, engage corporate leaders, train transport personnel, strengthen policies and protocols, and increase industry awareness. And we also had a monitoring and evaluation plan with a set of indicators to track our progress, and also a learning plan so that we could assess the effectiveness of our engagement processes and how we collaborated within the partnership. So for the first 2 years, we implemented our activities accordingly. So we gathered data on wildlife trafficking and produced reports. And we attended industry events to engage companies, and we developed guidance documents. And we produced training materials and held workshops with airline and airport staff on how to detect and report wildlife trafficking. And we worked with our industry partners to develop best practice guidance on how to prevent wildlife trafficking in airline operations. And then finally, we produced awareness raising materials and set up awareness installations in various key locations. And then each year we would review our progress along the theory of change according to step 4, analyse and adapt, before developing the next year's work plan. And then in 2017, about midway through the partnership at that time, we conducted a more thorough evaluation of our progress. So as the monitoring and evaluation officer, I had individual discussions with partners and also group discussions to review our progress along our theory of change in each objectives results chain, looking at our successes and our challenges, how we're aligning with our intended results chain, and identifying priorities and opportunities for future implementation. And then we also looked at our engagement strategies overall to see, what worked best, how we kind of best engage companies, like what kind of information was most compelling. And then we also looked at how we collaborated among the partners, since it was a new partnership with a diverse range of partners, so it was important to look at this. And so this process brought up a number of key considerations that we would need to think about as we developed our next work plan. One in particular was around our awareness raising objective, since we were finding that we were managing to raise awareness among our engagement, within our engagement objective and our training objective. In our specific strategy under our awareness raising objective, we were struggling to make it kind of scalable and cost effective. And then another challenge which was becoming kind of increasingly evident was the fact that there's quite a weak relationship between the transport sector and law enforcement at airports, since there's no kind of standard reporting protocol for transport staff to report anything illegal at airports. And if the transport sector was to take action to support law enforcement, there's no kind of feedback or recognition mechanism, and so it meant that there was sort of very little incentive for the transport sector to act. So we realised that however much we worked with the transport sector to help them detect and report wildlife trafficking, we weren't going to reach that next step of law enforcement being able to then make the arrests and reach our goal. So we had to address this. So following our discussions, we laid out a situation model of that particular issue, and then turned it into a theory of change, and had a look to see where our existing objectives and results and strategies sort of linked in with the results that we wanted to see, and then identified sort of two main themes of results that we needed, and these became our key results within a new objective. And we then incorporated this into our theory of change and got rid of the other awareness raising objective, but keeping the main sort of components of that within the other results instead. So then under our fifth objective, we implemented activities to develop incentive mechanisms such as a certification platform for airlines to take action against wildlife trafficking. And we are developing a reporting app for transport staff to report anonymously to law enforcement. And we're developing technology to enable the automated detection of wildlife in baggage in airport screening systems. And we're seeing some great successes now. Airports and airlines and other aviation companies are taking action all across the world, including, for example, about 13 companies, associations and airports that we know of have integrated roots materials into their training programs. 5 major airlines have been certified within the first 2 years of our new wildlife trafficking prevention assessment, which is pretty promising considering that we've had the COVID pandemic for the past year. 34 or more airports are now members of the Airports Council International Wildlife Trafficking Task Force, which is basically a channel for Roots to share its resources and guidance and spread our influence. And we've established a Southern African force to help tackle wildlife trafficking in a kind of multi-sectoral approach. And we're continuing to analyse and adapt and plan new activities and implement. During this past year, with COVID, it's had a really terrible impact on the air transport industry, which has really restricted the ability to engage with us on wildlife trafficking, quite understandably. And we've had an inability to travel to meet our partners and work with them, and lots of industry events and events that we have either had to be cancelled or postponed or put online, which kind of limits the ability to build relationships. So again, we reviewed the barriers to our progress along our theory of change. We identified mitigation measures and we revised our strategy where necessary. And we continue to monitor the situation. And we're also looking into new opportunities since the pandemic's really highlighted the links between wildlife trafficking and zoonotic diseases. And it's brought fresh interest among the industry and other stakeholders to take action. So we're looking to see how we can support this using the platform that Roots has built already. So our main lessons learned, we found it critical to understand the motivations within your target stakeholder groups, and that you should never assume that if someone can do something that they will. You need to know that they also want to and they feel confident to. If you have a particularly complex project, or if you're working in a complex or evolving environment, you need to monitor your progress closely and evaluate everything regularly. with USAID, as part of our agreement, we had one full-time monitoring and evaluation staff member, which is me, and we were really supported and encouraged to review and adapt our strategy as necessary. And that's been critical in being able to sort of ride the wave of this past year. And then tied to both of the above, working in partnership with your target stakeholders really enables you to get the best insights into the motivations and the needs of your stakeholders. And again, this has been critical in being able to respond sort of sensitively and appropriately to the COVID pandemic in terms of engagement with the transport sector. And then finally, our step 5 of conservation standards. We document all our lessons learned in our M&E in our reports to USAID, where they go onto a public platform. We've kind of evaluated our lessons learned on private sector engagement and shared that within Traffic. And some colleagues and I conduct training within Traffic on monitoring and evaluation best practice, and working with our partners on our theory of change and our results and indicators. We're sort of building the capacity among them as well. And then obviously we took part in the case study competition, and we are hopefully going to become a member of the partnership soon, if you'll have us. And we look forward to that if that happens. Thank you very much.
Fine. Thank you, Philippa. Yeah, so just as a reminder, folks, there are 3 organizations, including Traffic, that are up for CMP membership today. So, right on. So, questions. I had there's a question in the chat, but I wanted to also ask a question. Philippa, what was the familiarity with Traffic, with the open standards, with the conservation standards before this project?
Personally, I don't know very well, because I joined just a few months into the Roots partnership, was the implementation of it. So I don't really know the background, but oh yeah, Megan, she can say it was low. But I think we've got a couple of new members of staff now in the last couple of years to support things like project design and theory of change and indicators and things. And because I'm full-time on M&E, I'm also working to build capacity and yeah, support the integration of this approach into other projects.
And maybe Philippa, I can jump in, and great to see some familiar faces. I think some staff had a lot of familiarity with the Conservation Measures Partnership, but I think it was quite narrow within the organization. So there were several of us that were familiar and had the pleasure of coming to a meeting years and years ago back in Bethesda. But Philippa's done an amazing job of really broadening out the understanding and exposure throughout Traffic.
Right. Can everyone hear and see me? I'm having some connectivity issues.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Fine.
Hear you.
Okay, well, we'll just proceed then. So, Will, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Hello, Philippa. So I just wondered, you talked about the monitoring and the importance of the close monitoring, and I know this is your life and your passion. That's great. And I just wondered if you can speak a little bit more to what you found from the close monitoring that you thought, or the team found, well, gosh, we really learned something there that we didn't realize, and that made a real difference to the actions that you took.
Sorry, is that in terms of the COVID, you saying, or just generally?
No, not COVID. No, I just think in terms of the project, just in terms of monitoring the project, so doing your M&E work, and you thought, wow, we really learned something there, that helped you, that sparked sort of an aha moment that made you think, whoa, we need to change something, or that's really important, that makes a real difference to our thinking, or something like that.
Yeah, so we, if I interpreting your question correctly, so we would, there was kind of, I don't know if there was a real aha moment, but we were finding generally with some of our activities, or they're just not kind of having the impact that we wanted, and so gradually each year, as we were monitoring our indicator data, we just weren't hitting some targets, and so when we then did our midterm review of everything, things just kind of came out in discussions, but I wouldn't say it was kind of, there were no real, aha moments.
That's fine. No, I just wondered, and because sometimes that happens, but more, I'm sure what you describe is quite typical. But even unless you're keeping on top of it, and you're seeing how things are going and seeing if you're getting the results, then you really don't know. And maybe it gives you more confidence to know you're more assured as to what seems to be working and what isn't. And you maybe had an instinct of what was happening, but by doing it more closely, more systematically, you're more assured of what's really going on.
Yeah, I think so. And also, like one of the key lessons we learned, because we work so closely with each of our partners, and two of them are representatives of the Air Transport Association and airports associations. We speak to them, a couple of times a week, and it just kind of, various things just come up in conversation, and then the sort of ideas start to form kind of over time. So that's critical that we're sort of always talking to the people who are in the middle of it.
Thank you.
More questions?
Just from the project management side at USAID, Matt, I can't reiterate enough, I think, how the open standards and internal to USAID are kind of adaptive management, pausing and reflecting has been on the activity. The added, taking a look at a really complex system, which I think Philippa showed there, and trying to go between like a systems map where you try to connect kind of who's involved in the system and put that in a conservation standards, kind of what is the impact of your action on achieving a specific outcome. I don't think if we hadn't stopped kind of halfway through and done our pause and reflect exercise to really think about how are we engaging with the private sector? Is it really about their awareness? Is it really more about that huge gap between the private sector and law enforcement? I think that had a major impact on the activities in the project and how we kind of retooled both the partnership. I mean, that involved dropping a partner or a partner leaving this consortium, which was a lot of disruption, but then also adding a new partner, which was the Airport Council. That happened kind of in year 2 of the project, I think. So I think it's been fundamental to achieving the results that we have. And, it's an ongoing issue, and there's never going to be an end date, to be honest, in terms of the airline sector's role in wildlife trafficking. But I think we've made a lot of progress through our activities, and I owe a lot of that to this approach.
And this is Alicia Grimes, also working on routes with Megan. What I think is valuable, Philippa made a very good point of stakeholder engagement. We were actually working in partnership with the general sectors that we were targeting. And at first, this project was brought together on a co-creation, co-design, one of the first in AID, broad agency announcements. And at first, some of the partners were, you know, kind of tripping over each other, trying to figure out how to work together. But the value of engaging with associations is that they are representing and can represent the needs of a much bigger group of stakeholders, of the whole sector, and can work in partnership to achieve those goals. So other examples of, you know, and the conservation standards obviously provided a logical framework that we could all discuss around when we were together as a group, which is very valuable. But also being able to tap into the stakeholders, the beneficiaries of this, and realize that, hey, we want materials that are, the business to business materials that we can adapt. We can take the routes materials that are already developed and adapt it to our needs, our language, to reach out to our baggage handlers, et cetera. And so that was another lesson learned, for example, of not just monitoring systematically, but regular engagement, but using also the conservation standards as the framework for conversation.
Great, thank you, Philippa, Megan, and Alicia. I think I forgot to mention that this project was the second prize winner in the case study competition last year. So congratulations to all involved.